Hi everyone, and welcome to another painting tutorial from Promethean Paints. Today we're going to be seeing how I painted the Dark Angel Vindicator. There are the colours that we use, actually not too many for such a big model, mostly your greens and some silvers on this. We are going to use the airbrush, and I've set up the camera on the airbrush station, so it's the first time I'll be doing it. So there's a few little tweaks to the video as we go through, but hopefully it's clear for you. So yeah, I've started by obviously building the model and priming the model in Vallejo primer, black primer through the airbrush. It gives it a really nice clear finish, nice and smooth. A few coats of this, pretty thin, will be perfect for you. So yeah, just showing there the Vallejo primer. You don't have to water that or thin that paint, it comes straight out of the airbrush fine. I won't really go into my airbrush settings, as they do depend greatly on the airbrush you use, and there's so much to airbrushing. There's loads of tutorials available already about airbrushing. So first colour we're going to use is AK black green. Few drops of that into your airbrush. We've thinned it down. It's probably about a 2-to-1 mix in favour of the paint to Vallejo air thinner is what I use. And now we're just going to apply it over the Vindicator. It's not a 100% coverage of the model. What I'm doing here is focusing on the areas that I want to be green, leaving areas in shadow black. Obviously the airbrush allows you to get lovely gradient effects without too much problem, really. It's pretty straightforward. Pointing the airbrush in the direction where you want the paint to land. Little squirts, not long squirts, of the airbrush. As you can see, I tilt the model into all the directions where I want the paint to be. On the large flat panels, focusing on the edges and into the centre, leaving areas towards where natural light would be darker, just leaving those areas black or without as much colour on as you like. Takes a bit of practice with the old airbrush. Been airbrushing for many years, so I've gotten quite used to it. But as with anything, if you make a mistake, you can just go back over it in the primer colour and try again. So yeah, just keep working your way around the model, and catch up in a bit. Right, so that's the black green finished. Once it's dry, there's the thinner that I use. Again, a few drops of thinner with the, you can't really see it there, the light's bright, that's AK Deep Green, really nice green colour. So yeah, a few drops of the airbrush thinner in with your deep green, again a 2-to-1 mix. And now we've got some precise work going on, so you're really painting the areas you want to stand out as your bright green. This is your sort of mid-tone now. The dark green, the black green was your base, your darker tone, and your deep green is your mid-tone, but we sort of use that as your main highlight tone as well. So as you can see, I'm just focusing on the areas that I want to catch the eye, and where would have naturally caught the light. So the front of the dozer blade, all of the corners and the edges, any areas you really want to stand out. There's no real rhyme or reason to it. This is all personal preference. I've not picked a direction that the sunlight is coming down onto the model. This is a gaming piece, so it would be on the table, so I want it to sort of look good from all angles. So yeah, you just paint, aiming the gun into the centre of the area that you want to be brightest. That means it gives you a natural transition between your lightest and your darkest points. That's it. Again, a bit of practice. If you do wrong, you can just go back over it in your black green or back to your black primer and start again. Where you thin the paint down, it's not thick amounts of paint we're putting on here, it's micro thin, so you don't have to worry about clogging clogging detail or anything like that. It will just naturally, you'll have to put very, very thick coats on for it to block any detail. So as you can see, little squirts that I'm applying with the airbrush, not long squirts, and it'll just form natural gradients for you. Yes, I am using a Harder and Steinbeck airbrush. As I say, I've been airbrushing for many years. There is nothing wrong with a cheaper airbrush. I started with a £30 airbrush. It had no issues whatsoever. The better airbrushes, the better control, the finer detail that you can do with them. But for many years I was using airbrushes that cost £25-30. My first airbrush kit was less than £100 from Amazon. So don't think you've got to go out and spend hundreds upon hundreds of pounds for your airbrush stuff. If you're just starting out, you can get really good stuff for between £80 and £100, and off you go. One thing I want to add about this, obviously with the airbrush, if you don't have an airbrush, this can be done by dry brushing. Using those Artify dry brushes, you would use exactly the same colours, the black green, the deep green, for the base coating. All you would do is just go over a whole model, dry brushing with the black green first, waiting for it to dry, and then dry brush with the deep green. So a heavy dry brush with the black green, and a sort of not so heavy dry brush with the deep green. So yeah, feel free to do that if you need to, if you don't have an airbrush. So that's the deep green finished, and now we want to protect the model because this is a big model, there'll be a lot of holding it by the hands. We want to protect that lovely finish we've just created. So I use the AK Ultra Matte Varnish and give the model a good couple of coats all over. It will help seals it, and will protect it against any sort of hand holding you've got to do with the model. You see, I've sort of put it onto a painting handle, but a bit later on I take the handle away as it just starts getting in the way. So it just protects you against that. It also means that when you're going to applying any transfers, you haven't got any risk of you rubbing any paint away that you've already done with any solvents that you use or water that you use to apply your transfers. So yeah, a couple of coats of the matte varnish, and that gives a nice clean finish to that. And that's the airbrushing done. Pretty quick, as you can see. We move back over to the painting table, and the matte varnish has really calmed the paint down. It's blended everything nicely together, give it a nice smooth finish. And now we're just going to go through the phase of colouring in. So with Army Painter's matte black, I just now go in and basically base coat any parts of the model excuse me, that aren't armour. So there's the metal parts of the dozer blade, the tracks, the vents, yeah, anything that you don't want the green of the armour, just go in now and paint over with the matte black. This gives a nice clean finish to the areas, helps define shapes, gives some natural shadow to any other work we're going to be doing. Takes a little bit of time. I think it took me about 40-45 minutes to do it on this model because it's pretty large. But yeah, it gets you used to the model, what details are on there and how you want to go about it. So yeah, just carry on doing that. Okay, so as you can see, I've finished all the matte black base coating. Now we're going to move on to the silver work. There's quite a lot of silver on this. I'm using AK gunmetal, lead boucher, any of your mid-tone silver colours will be fine for this. And this is where we do a bit of dry brushing. So for my dry brushing, I use the Artify dry brushes. I think you can get a pack of 5 dry brushes for around £25 from Amazon. And they're some of the best dry brushes I've used, so I recommend getting them. This is the sort of second smallest size. There's one smaller than this, which is a little bit too small. This one I find is really good for these larger models. And yeah, so you just load up your brush, remove the excess, and then just gently dry brush over your areas. Bit of control here. If you're not confident, use a smaller dry brush, and if you're not confident then dry brushing, then feel free to paint the silver paint onto all the areas, and then you will just need, if you do that, just to shade it with some Nuln Oil. But with this dry brushing method you don't have to worry about any shading. You can if you want to dull the metal work down, but for me this was just natural gunmetal silver dry brushed over all the areas you want metallic. So that's the trims, the cannon, the vents, the smoky grenade launchers, the exhaust, and of course the tracks. that's the silver done. Now we're just going to move on to highlighting, which was with the Citadel Stormholt Silver, I think it's called. Just checking now. Stormhost Silver. We always get that name wrong. And yeah, this is your brightest silver point. So yeah, just like in the other, load up the brush and just hit the areas that you want to stand out, mostly your edges, just to clip them, just to make them the bit shinier areas, as you normally would with your dry brushing. A little line across the tracks is what I've done there. The tracks will be hidden later with some weathering effects, quick weathering effects we're going to do with the airbrush. So I've not done too much detail on those tracks. So yeah, as I said, they'll be covered. And now we're moving on to the gold. For this I use two colours. We're going to be using AK Rusty Gold and AK Old Gold. Again, you can use any of your gold colours as long as one of them's dark gold and then one of them's light gold. And just going to go on the areas that you want to paint into gold. So I've done the skulls, the Aquilas. There's not too much gold on these models. I tend not to do too much gold, especially for battlefield items. It seems like an odd colour you would have on there. There's lots of gold. But yeah, this is on, let's say, on the front of the tank here. There's some skulls here and there on this model. A couple of bits of piping by those big vents at the top there. And that's about it. So yeah, now we're going to use the AK Old Gold, which is a lovely bright gold, and now we're just going to edge highlight your gold areas, adding just some basic highlights to your skulls, on the top where the forehead of the skull would be, just around the eyes, just to bring some definition, a little bit on the feathers, not too much highlighting here. If anyone's curious on the brushes, so what I'm using there, what I used to base coat the black was just some old brushes, size 1 or 0 brushes. Anything you've got old hanging around that still can do a good point, you can use those. But for the finer detail work here, I'm using a Rosemary & Co size 00 and a Rosemary & Co size 0. Really good brushes. They're almost like a liner brush, allow you to get into the details really easily. You can position your hands quite well on the model. I have quite a shaky hand sometimes, but these liner brushes allow you to grip it at so many different points and get that brush into the finer details a lot easier. I do recommend them. They're not as expensive as some of the other brushes out there. I find them very reasonable. Delivery's always within a couple of days as well. And the final highlight just on the gold, back to that Stormhost silver, just for a subtle edge highlight, not too much, so there's not too much gold on here, so just a subtle edge highlight around the model on your golden areas to really make them pop. Okay, now we're going to go on to creating those heat effects. Already we've done so much of the model. It's the armour, nearly done. Gold and silver work. So now we're on to creating some nice effects. So we're going to base coat anything we want to have that red heat glow with wine red. So I'm just pointing out here, you've got the exhausts, you've got vents on the sort of missile crane, exhaust vents, lights, anywhere where you want to do the red glowing effect. Just base coat using the AK wine red. Relatively straightforward, nothing much more to explain here. The video will show you what to do. I had a little bit of water there, just a drop, just one paint, just to make it run off the brush a little bit easier into some of those gaps. One thing I would say here, as you're watching this happening, is you notice that I'm finishing the brush stroke on the area that I want to be hottest or have the most glow. Where this brush is it's a little bit wet, the paint, so it will naturally pull where you leave the brush stroke on the model. So this is going into the corners. So yeah, you just see there the down strokes leave a little pool of water into that corner. Right, next colour will be AK Blood Red. I think GW equivalent is Evil Sun Scarlet for this. And this will be applied now around 2/3 of coverage of the wine red. Again, I added a little bit of water just to make it flow. Now I'm following the same method. So pulling the brush down into that corner that you want to see is the hottest. So yeah, I'm covering about 2/3 of the area. You don't want to cover it all because the wine red is almost the afterglow of what we're doing here. The blood red is a nice base to make the glow pop. And you'll already notice, just using these two colours, you're already getting quite a glowing effect already between the wine red and the blood red. So just go around now, and as I said, fill in about 2/3 of the area you've just covered. When we get to the vents, you'll notice the exhaust vents, that is, you'll notice that I'm just painting a thin line of the red in the centre of the vents, just to show that the exhaust is sort of coming from the centre of it and radiating out. And on the lenses, I'm pretty much covering all of the lens. I'm not leaving too much wine red, maybe a thin sliver at the bottom. And now we're going to move on to what sort of creates the effect, using AK White from the Intense range. any white will do here. I do prefer the AK white. I think it's a very good colour. Thin down ever so slightly so it flows off the brush nicely. And what we're going to be doing, as you see here, is covering a very small area. Again, letting that white paint pull into the corner you want. Kind of go a little bit overboard on that one. You'll see on the vents, literally less than a third of the area covering white, usually into the corners, and letting it pull onto the part that you want to be as the brightest. That's the same on these vents, on these exhaust vents I'm just doing here, and on the exhaust vents on the top, just paint a little line of this in the very centre of the blood red that you've just done, and that's all you need to do for those. And you'll notice on the lenses and the lights, I do little dots on the lights, and on the sort of lenses around the hatch opening, I do L shapes around the corners, just almost like a TV type screen effect on those thin little lines. So a little bit of brush control is needed here, but I say if you thin your paints down, use a nice thin tip, you'll be fine. And now for some fun. So this is Green Stuff World Fluorescent Red. There are other fluorescent reds out there. I just find this one really nice. It holds its colour very well once it's mixed. Really mix the paint well. There's little ball bearings in these, so you need to hear that ball bearing rattle. Once you've mixed, put a little bit on your palette. And these are a little bit, I find, as like applying a contrast paint. You don't want too much, but you still need a good lump on your brush. And now you're covering up the areas you just painted. You're pretty much covering all of it. Leave a little bit of wine red showing, but it doesn't matter if you cover it all up. Just make sure you leave the brush stroke on the white area so that you deposit quite a bit of paint on the whitest part, the part you want to glow. And then to finish the effect, we use AK Fluorescent Orange, give it a good shake, and you'll put a little bit of this on your brush, and all you're doing here is painting over the areas that you originally had painted as white. Not the whole thing, as that will almost break what you've just done. So as you can see, in the very tips of the corners where it was at its whitest, just add little dollops of this orange. This is an optional stage, but I do find the effect really works well with the orange. You can even go one step brighter and add some fluorescent yellow, but I find that sometimes a little bit too much. It can break the effect a little bit. So yeah, just go around now and set the areas that were white that you painted over with the red, just touch those with the fluorescent orange, and that will be the effect all finished. And there you have it, all done. Dries pretty quick, that stuff, so you get the instant effect. Okay, skipped a few steps here. I added quite a few transfers. This is a gaming piece, and he has there's another Vindicator in the army which had loads of transfers. The script transfers you see there are from the Mighty Brush. They've got some amazing transfers, really easy to apply, really good effects. So I apply those in the normal way you would apply a transfer, by wetting them. Once they've dried, I then use the AK matte varnish over the top of them, which helps blend them into the model and gives a nice matte, almost painted finish once it's dry. So as you can see, we have not done any highlighting of the armour. This is what we're doing now. This is by far the longest piece of work, where you can have the most fun. So I use AK Frog Green, great name of a colour. I used to use the GW Moot Green and some Ice Yellow and do a sort of 50-50 mix, and then a friend of mine recommended Frog Green because actually that is the colour which is really good for your highlights. So what we're doing here is edge highlighting and battle damage, and this is where you can go absolutely crazy. At its core principles, we are edge highlighting the model, but we're also adding battle damage, which means you can add scratches, bullet holes, rough edges to wherever you want them. And in this tutorial I will show you how I've done the front and the top, and then we'll skip to once the sides and back are done, but it all follows the same principle. And as you can see, I'm just roughly edge highlighting, very roughly. I don't mind leaving thick edges, leaving scratch, leaving wobbles, leaving thick bits of paint. What this is doing is laying down the foundations of your battle damage. So the idea here is, if it's a thick line or a scratch, we will be colouring it in later with a black paint to make it look like there's a hole or a thicker scratch. This is where the paint is now peeling up, where a bullet is hit and gone deeper. So I'll be going all over the model, painting small scratchy bullet holes, edge highlights with pretty much everything as we go. So you can add as much or as little as this if you want. If you just want to edge highlight, then just use this colour and just edge highlight as you normally would, but I often find the battle damage gives the models loads of character, and it also means if you have a shaky hand or you're not too sure with your skill level on edge highlighting, it allows for you to make mistakes, because that mistake just becomes battle damage. Okay, so there is the model completely done with its edge highlighting. I do like to go for more. I find it gives great character, especially to tanks, as you know they would be hit hard on the battlefield. So now what we're going to do is colour in. So we're back to the Army Painters matte black. Again, any black will do. Abaddon black, anything you've got, just a nice matte black finish. And all we do now is start filling in where your scratches are, where your bullet holes were, and where your thicker edge highlightings were. If it's going to be your first time doing this, then I'd recommend doing a panel or a side at a time. So do your highlight in your battle damage, then go back over it with your black, just so you can remember where everything is. I've done this all in one hit for the tutorial, but generally I'll do one side of it and then move on to the next, so each side gets completed so I don't miss any areas. But always just keep looking around the model as you're doing this. On the scratches that you make, always add the black line to one of the edges of it, so the black is the hole, the scratch is the highlight of where that hole was, where the paint has torn up. And as you can see on some of these edge highlights, I'm literally dabbing the brush along it. As I'm edge highlighting, I'm lifting off the brush and tapping it as if you were tapping a snare drum, almost, to get a sort of dotted line effect as it's being scraped away. If you've added very big areas of battle damage, you can, if you wish, fill it with black and then fill it again with a dark silver or a darkish brown colour, to make it look like there's rust going on inside that gap. For this, I've not done that. For some pieces I have, but for this, where it's the smaller pieces of damage, filling it in with black is fine. So take your time on this, make sure you catch everything, keep reviewing the model, and yeah, just have fun with it. Right, so we're coming to the end of this. As you saw, I kept reviewing the model, looking around to make sure I'd caught everything. I'd missed some, so you're probably screaming at the camera that there was some missed. And as I said, just to make sure you really do cover up those odd lines and scratches that you weren't really expecting to see, otherwise they can look a bit wrong if you don't add the battle damage. And the final stage is we're going to add some weathering. So back to the airbrush, and we're going to be using AK Mud Brown, thinned down very heavily. You can use GW Steel Legion Drab. It's any darkish brown colour you can use for this, and this was at least a 5-to-1 mix, so it's 5 bits of water thinner to 1 drop of the brown colour. And I'm aiming the brush, you can't really see it very well there, I think you can in a minute. I'm aiming the brush bottom upwards, so pointing the nozzle towards the tracks and the base of the model to create an effect that there's dirt all around it. Again, little squirts of this, it's very thin, so little spots of it was coming out, but it doesn't matter, it just looks like deeper mud splashes. And again, you can add as much or as little of this as you want. Again, little is more sometimes, you don't want to add too much and hide everything. But as you can see, I've got the nozzle quite far away and just spraying it so it catches those bottom edges and the areas that I want to look dusty, as if this has been rolling along the battlefield and collated dust around the tracks. And that's your sort of final step for this. You can revarnish the model if you wish, but just remember, if you add a matte varnish now, you will dampen the effect of the fluorescent paints we've used. So if you are going to varnish, just cover those areas up with a bit of modelling putty, and that you'll be okay, or apply it with a brush. So yeah, that's the Vindicator all done. I really appreciate you watching the tutorial. Next are just a few slides that just show photos of the model, a 360 view of what it looks like. It's pretty straightforward. You can apply this to any Dark Angel vehicle, even the models themselves. I use exactly the same principles when painting the models. Yeah, so remember Mighty Brush for the transfers, which are the script transfers, the warning transfer, that skull transfer you see there. The name, that's a file name, is from their script transfers as well. They're really good. You can get chaos ones as well. So yeah, I really hope you've enjoyed this. I hope it was clear. If you've got any comments, please let me know. If you need anything tutorial done, let me know. Like, comment and subscribe. I really appreciate my subscribers and who follows me. Yeah, thank you very much, and happy painting.